about 1.9 billion acres of land in the United States. The Great Plains, the Rocky Mountains, and Maritime Shore all make up for this diverse landscape. And in the colonial era, most of this land was unknown. However, expeditions would discover the terrain, animals, and other cultures. Lewis and Clark have paved the way for exploration in the new frontier by creating alliances and foes with the Native American tribes.
Captain Lewis would enlist Lieutenant Clark to the Corps of Discovery in exploring the newly purchased land that the United States bought from France in 1803. This land was known as the Louisiana Purchase and contained 530 million acres of land. With all this newly gained territory, the United States would show an eager desire to play a role in the manifest destiny, moving west. The Corps of Discovery headed out from Camp Dubois outside of St. Louis, Missouri, in a 55-foot keelboat to begin the westward journey up the Missouri River. While heading upstream, they encountered one of the many Native American tribes in the new territory. This tribe was known as the Otos. However, many of the Otos were away hunting buffalo when the Lewis and Clark expedition reached their towns in July 1804. The Corps sent out 2 men to search for the Indians but came up empty. The captains decided to proceed up the river. A month later, a small group of Otos and Missouris arrived at the Corps' campsite, which Clark had named Council Bluff. The leading chiefs were still away hunting, but Lewis and Clark invited 6 or 7 lesser chiefs to a council the next morning. On August 3rd, with a great ceremony, Lewis and Clark held the first formal meeting between the representatives of the United States and Western Indians. The Indians observed as the soldiers marched in full regalia and demonstrated their skills with weaponry. The Corps' show of decorum and military strength would establish the routine for subsequent councils. Lewis and Clark also sought a council with the leading Oto chief, Little Thief. During the council, the Indians were told that they were children of a great father who would provide them with trade and protection in place of unreliable commerce with the French and the Spanish. It was a speech Lewis would deliver to numerous tribes throughout the journey. Little Thief agreed to the deal and indicated that he would go to Washington in the spring. In March 1805, a delegation, including Little Thief and 1 Missouri chief, met in Washington, D.C. with President Jefferson, who promised to trade goods and told them he hoped for peace. Continuing the journey west, the Corps of Discovery maintained transportation on the Missouri River. It wasn't long before stumbling upon the Hidatsa villages. Both Captain Lewis and Clark built Fort Manded there and started interviewing the people. Their goal? To find a guide that could assist them on their expedition. They found a French-Canadian fur trapper named Toussaint Charbonneau. Charbonneau's wife, who was pregnant at the time, would also join the Corps of Discovery as a native interpreter. Her name was Sacagawea. She was sold off to Charbonneau after her capture from a nearby tribe in Idaho at the age of 12. As Captain Clark noted in his journal, a pretty woman with a party of men is a token of peace. Shortly after joining the Corps of Discovery, Sacagawea gave birth to a young baby boy who Clark called Pompey. She strapped him on her back as the Corps of Discovery ventured west. Later that year, Captain Lewis, Sacagawea, and 3 other men scouted 75 miles ahead of the main expedition's party crossing the Continental Divide. After crossing the Continental Divide, the explorers encountered a group of Shoshones. However, this wasn't any other tribe that the Corps of Discovery had seen. This was Sacagawea's old tribe, and her very own brother was the chief. They haven't seen each other in 5 years since her kidnapping at the age of 12. Unfortunately, she had to bid a quick farewell to her beloved brother and continue on with the journey. Without this connection, the group would have seen a different fate. However, the Corps of Discovery were able to communicate with Shabanu and Sacagawea back at the village, enlisting them as translators. With verbal contact, both the natives and Americans could build a peaceful relationship with each other. After 1 year, 6 months, and 1 day after leaving St. Louis, the Corps of Discovery had finally reached the Pacific at the mouth of the Columbia River. The Corps established Fort Clatsop, near present-day Astoria, Oregon, as its winter quarters. Then on March 23, 1806, the wary explorers headed for home in St. Louis. The expedition separated into 2 parties to explore the country more thoroughly on the return trip. The groups would be apart for more than a month. 50 years before Lewis and Clark, the Blackfeet Indians had a reputation for being hospitable to the Europeans, who would occasionally even lodge with them in the winters. By 1806, however, the world inhabited by the Blackfeet in present-day northern Montana had grown increasingly complex. The Blackfeet were regular commerce partners with the Canadian-based British merchants, and in their frequent visits to trading posts, the Indians exchanged wolf and beaver pelts for guns, ammunition, and alcohol. This relationship had lasted over 20 years, and through that point, the Blackfeet, armed with guns, had been able to dominate their Nez Perce and Shoshone rivals. 8 Blackfeet warriors encountered Lewis and the Corps of Discovery in July 1806. The Indians decided to camp with the Americans to get a better understanding of who they were. During the first day and night, Lewis explained the United States' intent to achieve a comprehensive peace between all the Indian tribes of the West. He went on to feature that the Shoshones and Nez Perce, mortal enemies of the Blackfeet, had already agreed to this peace and would be receiving guns and supplies as a result of it. To the Blackfeet, American plans represented an immediate threat. As far as the Indians were concerned, giving guns to their adversaries only could end in the weakening of Blackfeet power. That night, the Blackfeet attempted to steal the expedition's guns. Their plans failed, and within the chaos that ensued, Lewis killed a Blackfeet warrior. The incident marked a primary act of bloodshed between the Western Indians and the representatives of the United States. The surviving Blackfeet returned to their tribe and communicated that they had learned of America's goals for the region. From that time forward, the Blackfeet regarded the Americans belligerently and acted towards them similarly. Within the years that followed, Blackfeet war parties would be responsible for the deaths of 3 former members of the Corps of Discovery. The Corps of Discovery had finished their mission. They have paved the way for exploration in the new frontier by creating alliances and foes with the Native American tribes. From negotiating a peace treaty with the Otos to enlisting a native translator that would assist them on their trek west. With all this information that was written in the journals, modern-day humanity has an understanding of exploration in the new frontier.